here we go. Expecting to be at the piano, but there we go. We thought we'd do something a little bit different today, if that's okay. When I was little, there was a piano in the house. Alicia had some lessons and Stephen had lessons, and so did I. There was a family a couple of doors away called the Baker family, and their middle daughter was a really wonderful piano teacher and piano player. She ended up playing with Ivy Benson's band, which some of you probably know about. So as long as I can remember, there was a piano in the house, and when I was little I used to go and sit I could only play 3 fingers and 1 finger, so I did like Mum used to say that sometimes she'd come in and I'd be playing and tears would be pouring down my eyes, down my face, if you know what I mean. Just the sequence of the notes were having that effect. I'd be sitting there for a few hours and, you know, Mum would be cooking dinner for us, usually when I was 3 or 4 years of age. But I found it an amazing thing, but I couldn't really get to grips with it. We're talking like 1957, 58, 54, 55, 56. Things have changed musically. I'm hearing things on the radio which are really catching my ear. And of course you learn these things. What comes to you naturally as a writer, I think, you learn from being like 2 to 7. When you're playing as a child, there's this music going on, whatever it is that's being played on the radio or whatever you're hearing or whatever, or maybe somebody singing in the house. And when something good comes along that kind of resonates with you, that's what goes onto your tape. And that becomes natural to you. So of course I was listening to rock and roll, and I was listening to the opera, because my mum was singing opera and she loved it, loved Mario Lanza. You know, loved Nat King Cole, I think I mentioned this before, and of course Stephen loved Fats Domino, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, all these things. So I'd had a little go on the guitar that my brother brought over, and then when I was 13, as I mentioned before in a previous episode, my dad buys me a guitar. And what I found about the guitar was that I'm not a dancer. I've got 3 left feet, never mind 2 left feet, and I'm not trying to be a comedian now, I really am not. But when I've got the guitar in my hand, I can dance, and I realise that the guitar allows the player to dance in the rhythmic way, which you can't always do with the piano, even though Little Richard will come and say, no, yes you can, and all these wonderful piano players, but my playing was really very stilted. So I'd carried on with the guitar, carried on writing songs, doing a bit playing in bands and stuff. And then, very kindly, my first wife, Wendy, bought me a harmonium, a pedal organ. And that was a whole opening for me that I didn't realise existed. The great thing about the pedal organ, we tried it, I think we bought it from Shawcross's in Eccles. And of course I sat down to play it, and I realised that you pump it with your feet and you get this wonderful rhythm that you get, because there's a sustain. You know, I play the notes here on the piano, you get, and it's pretty much gone. That's it, it's the organ. You know about all this, so I'm just repeating. And the pedal organ, brought it home, and I started writing tunes on it. And of course, you're young and you're enthusiastic and you want to write something, you know, good. I think that's the word we're looking for. Me, I've never had any great desire to be adulated. I've mentioned this before. And of course, I have to question myself whether that's true, but I think that really, I've just moved the microphone out of the way now. I think that really, I was more connected with the music than I was with the things that happened. I'd been chased down the road at 13 by a load of schoolgirls, and we played in St. Joseph's, we played at Salford, we played a gig. And it was just a moment, but really, it was the music that I connected with. And the pedal organ, I got sustain. So I got this situation where I could play a note without doing lots of work. You know, it's all there. So when we were little, my dad used to work at a place called Glover's Cables, which is behind the Manchester United ground. What happened was, every Boxing Day, all the children of all the people who worked at Glover's Cables would go to Old Trafford, behind the old football ground, and there'd be rows of buses, and they'd take us off to Belle Vue to Billy Smart's Circus. So there'd be like 20, 30 buses loaded up with all the kids of all the people who worked there. And that was an annual event. And of course, in there you got Charlie Caroli. But when I got the pedal organ, it reminded me, when you play it, it has a kind of a sea shanty kind of sound about it, a bit like the squeeze box has and probably the accordion has, but the pedal organ definitely has that sound about it. If you can play it, that is. So I decided I wanted to write a rock opera. Stop!
Cannot lose her when you tell the little one her daddy's always thinking of her and he loves her still.
We'd seen Tommy, and we'd seen there was a great one by Pretty Things, I think P.F. Sloan, I think it was called, because it had that sea-faring sound. I started writing songs about the sea. The influences for me were, of course, as I said, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the rock and roll was a big influence, courtesy of Stephen, because Stephen was a rock and roller. He used to go to the Locarno in Sale and go to the Ritz. My mum, on the other hand, was singing all these Russian amazing melodies that nowadays I hear it in things like Sigur Rós, you know, which I'll try and do a little bit of. So, and she's singing in Russian, so I can't understand a word. But I'm seriously getting the emotion, and I'm down here, 3, 4 years of age, and she's crying sometimes when she's singing this. So that period of time, from 2 to 7, when you're listening but not really listening, you're hearing things, perhaps over and over. If you're lucky enough to hear the truth, which, you know, I'm always on about as somebody, and my mum was probably singing about being a child in Russia up until 1917, and her emotions that she was raising up when they were coming to, because of course she was little at that time. That lasts with you. And if you start to write, you keep returning to those moments when your tape was blank and those things resonated with you. So those influences for me, the rock and roll and the opera, a clash, a combination which has an enormous effect on the way I wrote and have written lots and lots of ballads. I've written ballads for Meatloaf, I've written ballads for many of my female peers have sung my songs. How lucky am I? So that era, for me, from 2 to 7 or 8, is where my influences come from. When I'm 13 and 14 and I'm trying to sound like The Who, I'm trying to sound like the Small Faces, I'm trying to sound like the King, I'm aiming for something that isn't actually my influence, which is why you sound like you're emulating. If you do what you learnt in the early period of your life, those things will come to you naturally. And I suppose that's why record companies sometimes release things from back, because they think, oh well, this group of adolescents, you release a song for when they were saying, I really like that. You really like it because you heard it back then when you were playing with your train or with your PlayStation or whatever. So I should play this little bit of the opera. There's a few different songs. I can't remember most of them, but I'm going to see if I can get through 2 verses for you. And if I can't, we'll have a laugh together, okay?
Daddy's always thinking of her, and he loves her still.
So what's all that about? I'm trying to write something. The pedal organ makes it all sea shanty, so of course the sea shanty sound prompts me to start to writing about a young man who's married or hoping to marry or has married the daughter of the captain on whose boat he's going to sail. And what happens? He gets washed overboard. You know, it's probably a whaling ship or something like that. I don't know. I didn't get that far into it really. The view was just kind of opening. I was just getting some kind of panorama to write towards.
The best wife any man could hope for in his captain. Will you tell your daughter she's the best wife any man could hope for in his captain? Will you tell your daughter she's the best wife any man could